welcome everyone. Welcome to DesignMeets. I am Ian Chalmers, the Principal and Creative Director with Pivot Design Group and founder of DesignMeets. In an essential step towards truth and reconciliation as a member of Canadian society, we acknowledge the traditional lands that our studio occupies. We're grateful for these lands and have the utmost respect and recognition of Indigenous peoples, their circular practices and ways of knowing. Our path forward is together. Since we started DesignMeets in 2010, it's acted as a community platform for exchanging ideas, getting inspired, collaborating with our peers, all to find meaningful ways to put design and its sort of transformative power to work. At our last event, March 2nd, we looked at the future of collaboration. The pandemic era, as we have all experienced, brought real change to our work environments and to our creative processes, which raised a lot of questions about the nature of creativity and collaboration. Designers have adapted especially to this remote work using emerging technologies, but the challenges with that comes how effective our collaboration is, what our creativity is like, and what our productivity is like. Industry has definitely transitioned to this hybrid phase, offering different ways for us to work. And this has definitely optimized our creativity and collaboration in ways that we wouldn't have before. And we have also taken into consideration the next generation of designers and how they will work. For a summary on this event, please visit designmeets.ca. Human-centered design is an approach to problem solving that puts people at the heart of the process. This begins with empathy for people we are designing for. The design process generates a wide variety of ideas, which translates into prototypes, testing, and iteration. What if we applied the same approach, but included our natural world and systems as part of our decision-making? Life-centered design is a process that prioritizes the well-being and needs of living beings, both human and non-human, all throughout the design process. It aims to create products, systems, and environments that enhance, regenerate, and support quality of life for all living organisms. This life-centered design idea was new for me, and it probably is for those of you who have joined us today, except for Jeroen. I come from user-centered design background, user experience background, human-centered design background. So I was very curious about the evolution of our processes and methodologies. These processes, typically we put, the focus on human user. The problem with this approach is that we can't solve our current complex systems of inequality and climate crisis using these singular methodologies. We definitely need a new way of thinking. Luckily for us today, we have Jeroen Spoelstra to speak with us, and I will just go through his bio. I know you can see it on the site, but Jeroen is a designer focused on life-centered design. Living with his family in a small village in the Spanish Pyrenees, he has 3 creative projects underway: Unbeaten Studio, the Life-Centered Design School, and a mountain bike guiding company. His mission is to help creative professionals transition away from human-centered design to life-centered design and give a new voice to biological ecosystems, non-user communities, which have been silent in the design process. Before I hand over to you, Jeroen, our format today will just be, Jeroen's going to present for 15 minutes. This is a bit of a crash course on life-centered design, everyone. And the purpose here is to kind of establish an understanding of the concept and the practice. After that, we'll take some questions if you have any, and please just put them in the chat. Jeroen, over to you.
Okay.
Please take the wheel.
Thank you for this beautiful introduction. And maybe moving from human-centered design to life-centered design starts by moving a little bit slower. I'd like to talk about having less design sprints and maybe more design walks in a world where we're very rushed. And maybe we need to slow down and focus a little bit more. As Ian said, I'm from the Spanish Pyrenees, and this is my little village. It's called Usana Banaston. If you don't know where the Spanish Pyrenees is, it's basically the border between France and Spain. And we did a little project a year ago about the impact of tourism together with that local town hall. And we ended up talking to a little lake. And this is what she had to say.
Hello there, I'm Ibon de Plan, also known as Paso de la Mora. Welcome! I am a glacial lake, which means I've been here since prehistorical times. If I tell you the pine cones are actually flowers that resemble their cone-bearing ancestors, you'll understand that I've been here for a long time. The 430-kilometer long mountain chain of the Pyrenees you can see around me was formed 65 million years ago by the collision of the tiny Iberian and the Eurasian plate. I'm of service. My surface reflects the sky, the mountains, and the trees around. I'm never alone. I have a significant role here. I host an entire ecosystem, from the microorganisms and frogs that live in my waters to the cattle and animals that come to drink me. My rocks protect the lizards that live under, and the moss that resides on top. My trees need to be solid and resistant to hold the soil. So you see, we protect each other. It's a very delicate balance to maintain. I'm the first cod pine you see when you arrive here. I heard you coming on my pebbles. Because I'm so exposed, nobody dares to be against my bark. These are my kids. They grow under my wings. Here, my friends live and die. And when they do, you could say I reuse their bodies. And I produce a lot of mud. Most humans don't really like it, especially girls. We are a community, and to be healthy, the balance of all forms of life living within me must be too. Just as bacteria in your gut manage your digestion, the planktons and other microorganisms living within me enable the cycles of nature. Nowadays, I'm even part of Instagram pictures. But sometimes I feel like humans only see me as expendable, an add-on to the place that doesn't move, live, or breathe. But I do. My lungs are the mountains from which I draw the snow that composes my mass. My legs are all the path I take to arrive at the delta of the Ebro. I have a direction indeed, and a reason to exist. I am not an accessory, and I'm actually the reason why you are coming. Look at me. Sometimes I would like you to see me. Can't you see the ripples and waves I form? How perfect are they? Isn't it relaxing to look at me? My waves are like a massage to the little creatures inside me. Can't you see? I create peace around me. Rivulets carry granite rocks, and pebbles tickle me. We meet every day and laugh together. Look at me, I'm laughing, can't you hear? Connect with me. I am a natural obstacle that forces you to slow down and go around me. You cannot not see me. You have to stop and choose which way to go and which path to follow. Will you go left or will you go right? When you come with your electric mountain bike, you drive so fast you don't see me. When you leave your trash and swim inside my waters, you're poisoning me with your human creams and sunscreens, leaving a chemical print that will take decades to disappear. If I had a voice, I would ask you, little human, to protect me. My nature needs time to regenerate. I feel so weak already. The views and peace you enjoy are a privilege I'm glad to bless you with. But please, not all at the same time. Droughts and fire are my biggest fears. Can you make the signs clear and ensure that other humans like you won't harm me? I am not sure if I'm very well. I don't know what's wrong with me. I would like to have my health tested.
So you've just listened to the emotional narrative of the non-human persona we created from this glacial lake. And we wanted to understand the impact of tourism on this lake and in this region. So what we did was actually combine scientific research on climate change in the Pyrenees together with like immersion. So we went with a team of designers and design students to the lake, and individually we in silence, we tried to connect in different ways with the lake, with the surroundings. Some people kind of were focusing on the trees, and the result was kind of this audio file. And we learned several things. I think as a designer, I learned that you can actually go to these places and be a designer and use what you as this place as inspiration. It's not just kind of from an image that's beautiful nature. No, immersion in nature help me better understand the impact we have as humans on the planet. Just standing still in nature, looking around, observing, kind of feeling the wind, touching it. So that's one thing. That if you go as a group of designers, like there's this different group dynamic at some point, because you're all kind of in nature and there's like this, I don't know, like a mutual understanding. So that was kind of on one side. And the other side, if you look at climate change and then on how you can like you can look on micro level, so that's tourism, but you could also, for example, look at like a more industry level, Airbnb, Booking.com. Why don't Airbnb come say like, hey, this place is full, this area is full with tourists, so better not go there. So not only say that when your hotel is full, put that on the website, but also maybe when there's a lot of pressure on nature. And this lake is super tiny in the middle of the Pyrenees, but it's kind of affected by the global climate change. It's not, this lake stands for me, also was it's close for global climate change. So you probably find in your own surrounding spaces that are like dear to you and also feel the global effect. So what can you do with this as a designer? You can include this voice and the pains and the needs of this lake in your design challenge. When you design in this case, maybe a new tour, or you can maybe find ways to kind of like release the pressure of this lake, or you can talk with Booking.com and Airbnb, kind of how can you maybe lessen the pressure on nature. If you look from a human-centered, from a lifestyle design perspective, then you way more want to look not only what Ian said in the introduction, like we traditionally in human-centered design, you focus on the human that's in the center of the core, but maybe now it's all different life forms, and it's like you have to look at the impact of the planet with your design, on the impact of society, and on the local communities, and on the impact of the economy. Those three elements are relevant. And for example, in the region where I live, very beautiful nature, but there's economic activity, there's tourism activity, and there's a local community that needs to live there, that maybe not dependent on tourism, but all these three elements need to kind of work together. And that's where lifestyle design comes in, to kind of, can you create pathways forward to the future that like enables nature to thrive, the local communities to thrive, and also the impact on the economy is positive. And you have, so that for me, it means that you have to way more design with intention and look beyond just tomorrow or the day after tomorrow, but way more in the future. And what is lifestyle design for me? Ian already kind of told a bit, but it's a design philosophy and approach that goes beyond human needs and puts light at the center of our creation. Lifestyle design advocates for the biological ecosystem and non-user communities that never had a voice before in the design process. And to me, the long-term goal is to restore natural ecosystems and create new relationships between nature and humanity that benefit both. We need to design new future perspectives followed by everyday actions. We're talking a lot about sustainability and regeneration, and it's very hard for designers and for creators, but also and other professionals to kind of understand where they need to start on this journey? Because it's so big. So can you create more well thought through future perspectives that kind of like have like a more clear view and translate that to everyday action? And that's something we try to kind of do with the Lifestyle Design School, help professionals make those first steps into the lifestyle design, and then make sure that they adapt it to their own journey. Thank you so much for this very short talk. And I hope you have that you have some questions.
Excellent. Thanks, Jeroen. Well, I think that there's probably an abundance of questions we could ask one another about this as we poke around the idea, but we'll certainly open it up to the floor. If anyone has some questions, please put them in the chat. But I would start with, obviously, I wish I had the opportunity to come and do your 5-day retreat in the Pyrenees. It sounded like an incredible 5 days for your participants. What were the greatest aha moments for your participants? And I know there were people from all over. You had Canadians, you had Americans, you had
yes, people from Sweden and the US. So those three, like, I think the aha moments were that it's all about relationships, that we have to reconnect with the nature. And I think that's kind of the human personas try to kind of help with that. And about designing with intention, and maybe also living by intention. And it's really about trying to kind of like changing our mindset, with the way we design and go outside. Like, so for example, we worked for the bearded vulture, that was kind of our client. And there's an EQ museum, and there's a lot of information about like this beautiful bird. But they only fully kind of understand this bird, or got more like understanding of how the ecosystem they live in, is when we went to this canyon where these birds kind of have their nest and they breed, and we saw them fly and kind of move around. They only then they kind of understood kind of what that bird means, maybe to this area, and what's how it is part of this whole ecosystem. And that's maybe what you said in your beginning about collaboration. We now have this hybrid working, and it's like we're very much stuck behind our computers nowadays as designers.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we should get out again more. And me too, like I'm not like
Yeah. Well, and I'm sure a lot of your work is virtual, just because of the nature of proximity and where people are, and there's a great savings to people not flying around too often, but which is one of the benefits of that hybrid workspace. What challenges have you or what would you say greatest challenges you found in implementing this approach? Because you can imagine this is a new idea, bringing this into the boardroom, bringing this to business. What are the challenges there that you've?
Well, the main challenge is about like that. So I think there's two challenges. That's what, like, I talked to a lot of designers that like and other creative professionals that have discovered lifestyle design, but then there's nothing yet. How does it work? How do you use it? So that's kind of where we try to help them. That's one challenge, to get that going. The other one is, and that also starts with like, how do I implement this in my work? Where do I start? And because there's no time and there's no budget. And then I tell them, well, you're kind of like an accountant cannot skip steps in their work. I think as a designer, you should kind of really define what is your work about. And there's parts about immersion, about design research that take longer, and like, that's just your job. So, I think defend your job.
Mm-hmm.
And there's always this question about business. So how is this going to affect my business, kind of, because it's still a lot of short-term thinking about profit, and like, if I invest in this, what do I get out on the end? And that will keep on being pretty challenging, I think, as long as everyone is thinking about the short-term gain. Because I think part of what lifestyle design is about, but also I think other emerging purpose economy style concepts, it's about actually looking more to kind of what you have, what kind of people, like seeing your employees as a not as a resource, but as people that do great job and great work, and give them the space to do that. Maybe looking to other types of value. You know, there's a business value to something. There's also, well, to me, there's a value to nature. There's a value to people that you work for or work with, and that's just the most important thing. We're also just at the start of this whole lifestyle design movement.
This is the beginning, which is why you started the school.
Yeah.
We have a couple of questions here. Now this one we could do a follow-up, but are there any books you would recommend for the introduction into this sort of mindset of life-centered design off the top of your head? If not, we can always feel free to.
It's the Thriving in the Next Economy from John Takara. I think it's a really nice one.
What we'll do is we'll post these in the follow-up, or feel free to type an answer in the Q&A there.
John Takara, I think that was like thriving.
So while you're doing that, I'm going to ask you another question. Just I know it's like 10 o'clock at night where you are, so you're going to be really sharp. Really sharp.
I got my second energy.
So this is a lovely question. This is a touching and worthwhile mindset. How can we help to drive buy-in, especially outside the design community? And that's a fair point. That I mentioned business. We're in the design business, so we're talking human-centered, user-centered, or even circularity. Yeah. But bringing life-centered, how would you do that outside the design community? Any thoughts?
That's a good question. Maybe not call it life-centered design.
Right.
But I think it's the same with design thinking, like it has to do with always to do with terminology. And also looking kind of where do organizations start? Sometimes they start with zero, and then you talk maybe first about sustainability or about recycling before you can even talk about regeneration, or it's so that's one thing. And maybe just like organizing kind of like inspirational, so the plan what I have, for example, with this mountain lake, I live in this beautiful village, to make a Spanish version of this and do an installation on the old castle marketplace, where people can kind of experience these things.
Right.
I think those kind of like being creative, like use our creativity as designers to create these beautiful installations, where kind of tourists can come, but also maybe like other people. So that's kind of one element.
That's fair.
I think when you talk about company organizations, it's more about like the different types of value you look. Not only there's economic value in your products, but there's like a natural value or a natural impact, and there's a value on your communities. And how does that work? Like understanding, like everyone, and what I come across a lot is that there's organizations that have these beautiful mission statements about sustainability and like net zero and whatever, and then there's like a workflow that also wants to do these things, but there's no connection. So I think where like designers can help in is creating that connection between the two. So there's a lot of frustration somehow, because they say like, yeah, we have this mission and then we want to do it, but then like there's always this money block, or there's like the management that says no.
Of course. The same thing happens in user-centered and human-centered
design. So
too.
I think that's there's a lot of the same problems. So the people say, oh, like it's already hard to sell design, let alone lifestyle design.
Right. All right, another question here is, in terms of professional development, would studying sciences such as biology and ecology benefit one as a designer inspired to advance their career in the direction of life-centered design?
Maybe. I don't know, like for me, it's kind of in general weird that a lot of people talk about regeneration and sustainability, and they don't have a biology background. I also don't have that. Maybe that should be kind of part of your curriculum in high school and in university when you study economics. Fair or enough, design in general, I think
or surround yourself with people with those skill sets too. Right?
So I think that's what I try to do a lot, is kind of be very open to kind of my Northern Europe, like that I have this Northern European mind, and that like I have to get rid of a lot of things, like from back to like the colonials time. And just I speak to as many people as I can with different backgrounds to learn from them.
Yeah.
And that kind of that already helps me. And yeah, I have a friend that's like a forester here. That's a local forester. So he learns me a lot about kind of the about this area. And I think we also like, I think what we should be stay designers in that way, because we also look differently at things. And it's beautiful to see kind of how I look at nature and how my friend the forester looks at nature, and then we meet each other somewhere and we have these beautiful conversations about what he sees and what I see.
Using empathy is a strong skill set if you can develop it and scale it to apply to projects. There's another great question here, and we might just have to answer some of these questions later on. But this one is, how do we define a voice for another being without falling into a personal interpretation or interest? After creating these personas, there's part of the process that seeks to universalize that voice that speaks to every culture and language. I know you can see the question, so. That's a great point. It's like, how to remain objective.
Yeah, so you can't, I think. There's a lot of the things I kind of like see around me in like not only in design, but also in other things, that everything should be objective, but we're all humans. Like I think what you should kind of what you should do is kind of make sure that like there's an ethical guideline, or there's some ethical principles next to it, so that when you kind of decide to make these personas and then use them forward in your design process, that you have these kind of like ethical guidelines next to you, that you're aware of them, and things you might want to do when you're when you do these things, like like check 3 times with 3 different people to kind of, if the things you're saying are, if they're actually kind of valid.
The other thing you could do is you can also unpack your bias when you're doing your research and say, I am, a white male. I grew up in this environment. I come from this background. So my bias is going to be of a certain type. So if I'm trying to be as objective and empathetic as possible, but this is my lens. If everybody can kind of do that, it's helpful. But,
and what we did, I think we were with 8 people doing this kind of persona, so that you get all at least
right.
But yeah, I think when you use creativity, storytelling, and emotional narratives, like that part is always kind of like a human interpretation. And it's not, because I get sometimes like the questions or the critique that it's kind of like it's all still from this human point of view. But like the longer I work with lives in design, it's also about like how we change our behavior, and for me, like science was not enough to kind of like change our behavior for good for the planet. I'm not saying that lives in design is the solution, but like it's like, well, maybe if we make that emotional connection, that will help. So that's kind of part of the whole thing, kind of like these personas this emotional story might kind of touch you or make you then happy or angry, but like one of the two. That's good for me.
That's great. Well, we're almost at time, but I just want to read this one last question, if you don't mind. And to everyone here, we will be summarizing this. It's going to be recorded, edited, and there's going to be a blog post with details and some follow-up information. And good news, Jeroen is coming to Toronto with a group of other facilitators end of September to run a workshop. So we will be posting about this. There will be a small fee, but in this workshop, you can actually apply this practice to scenarios that are close to Toronto. Last question. What are some practical steps or strategies that individuals or organizations can take to incorporate life-centered design into their design processes? Practical steps.
I think then maybe organize conversations. Like go start with that, like kind of like organize with your team, kind of what lifestyle design could be for your team. That's one. Go to nature. Just go to nature alone or like with your team. Do that in silence, maybe like have a silent walk. What we do with the lake is then like we did a silent walk and we have a reflection about that, a check-in after that. Kind of what does that mean to you? And then have this discussion, what can we learn from this and how can we use this in our process? So that's one thing, or one or two things. Slow down your design process. We're actually working on a how to slow the guide to slow down your design process. It will come up in 1 or 2 weeks. Like take the time to kind of make decisions. Like stop voting, I would say. And when you have ideation, don't vote. It's not a political part. It's another political process. It's kind of a design process. So maybe use abductive reasoning for that. Looking through the whole ecosystem. We have an ecosystem mind map where we kind of, when we, not like it's some sort of context map, but like make sure that half of that mind map is about nature and the other half is about the human part. And then see where you can empathize with, and like start making these personas.
Yeah, non-human personas. That's a new one. I can't imagine. We've never tackled that. So we're going to wrap up.
Like we're working on something that's specifically for that, like kind of like those non-human. I got a lot of questions about that. So we're working on a little course for just making non-human personas.
I believe we have some links that you shared with us that we'll share with the group. Lauren, if you want to just put this in the chat. And Gregory posted, it sounds like design studios need to get out of their own silo. Studios not full of designers trained by designers, and I couldn't agree more. But that's very typical, right? That's the way our field is currently. But we need to be more inclusive by adding other stakeholders in the process. So just wrapping up, everyone. Thank you for those of you that showed up today. Our next event is on healthcare resiliency, and that's in October at OCAD-U. This is the event that Jeroen and I and a few others are working on, Life-Centered Design for Urban Environments Forum. And we're very excited about the prospect. This will be with a DesignMeets panel on the Friday night evening. We'll be talking about life-centered design, decolonizing design, etc. Saturday will be the workshop. There'll be some field work either on Saturday or on Sunday. So it'll be over the weekend, but will be an opportunity to apply these practices with Jeroen and his school. And
I'm very excited because it will be the first time I visit Canada. So
well, you have to bring your mountain bike.
I will.
So a big thank you to Jeroen for spending his evening with us. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for the invitation. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks for caring about life-centered design, and we look forward to seeing you at the next event.